Hello, everyone. We are back for round two coverage of the Lmshl playoffs. This is going to be starting up on Wednesday, and we are down to the Elite Eight in the NHL. So starting out west or out east, excuse me, we have Boston taking on Buffalo, Washington taking on Philadelphia, LA taking on Chicago, and Edmonton taking on Seattle. All right, so we're going to be previewing all of these series today, give my analysis and predictions and all that kind of fun stuff. All right, so we'll start with Boston and not Toronto, Buffalo. So look at the tail of tape first. Again, these are two divisional rivals. One thing I will note about all of these series is that these are all divisional rivals. So the top two Atlantic teams, the first and third seeded Metro teams, and then out west you have the first and second Central teams, and then the first and second Northwest teams. So these teams have played each other a lot this season, and should be some awesome games. All right. So all right, now kicking off with Boston and Buffalo. So Boston in the head-to-head went 4-2 against Buffalo. Buffalo went 2-3-1. Boston was 44-9-1. Buffalo was 28-25-1, so just over 500 for the Sabres. Like I just said, first in the Atlantic for Boston, and second for Buffalo. In the first round, Boston beat Toronto in 6. Buffalo beat Detroit in 7. So some bit of a tighter series in both of those cases. For special teams, and these are regular season special teams. The rest of the stats are playoff stats, okay? So 34.2% power play in the regular season for Boston, 82.6% penalty kill. That's third and first in the league. For Buffalo, a bit of a different story. Only 21.6% power play with a 69.3% penalty kill. That's 19th and 14th in the NHL. Now, looking at these are the playoff stats now. So, Boston has scored 3.33 goals for per game and a 2.33 goals against. And Buffalo is at a 2.86 goals for per game, and they've given up 3.71. So they're at a -6. Now, keep in mind, these are very low sample sizes. I mean, 6 and 7 games each. So as the playoffs go on, I think these numbers will sort of normalize to where they should be. I don't think Buffalo is as bad as giving up 3.71 goals against per game. At least I don't think they're that bad. I think it's I should say maybe the 2.86 goals for that might be a little low. So far in the playoffs, Boston's leading scorer is Muggy Bobcat with 7 goals, 2 assists for 9 points. I believe that should be all in 3 games. Leaky is at a 78.33 defensive rating. And Sway, in these playoffs so far, is at a 7.94 save percentage and a 2.33 goals against. Again, low sample size, not a ton of shots faced. I remember watching the Toronto games, and they have like 4 shots and 2 goals, and but they're getting outshot 17-4, so they're getting dominated. But the chances that they were scoring a little bit. So I'm not really worried about all that. If I'm being honest, I don't really see anything to worry about. I think if Boston were to advance, I think Sway's save percentage would definitely go up. I think the goals against is more telling, and that is at a very good 2.33. Now, on the Sabres side of things, we have Slot Shot with 4 goals and 8 assists for 12 points. I believe he played game 7, maybe. We'll look at that in a minute, but that might see them 3 or 4 games. And then Maniac Mayo is at an 85 defensive rating, and I Kill You with a 7.94 save percentage and a 3.43 goals against. Again, not really concerned with the save percentage yet. Sample size is pretty low. All right. So we'll kick it off. We'll go to the player leaders for the playoffs. We'll take a look at both teams, see the full picture for both sides. We'll go playoffs, full skating stats. We will go to Boston first. So again, Muggy with 9 points, Timmy with 8, Rhyme with 6 points, all 6 are goals. Crazy Flame with 6 points, all 6 are assists. Pels with 5 points, Delusions 4, Archie with 4, Leaky, Dean with 3, and Danny with 2. They all played 3 games, okay? So you're looking at like their 2 lines here. Pretty good production out of Muggy, especially 7 goals in 3 games is quite good. And then of course Timmy with 8 points and 41 hits. So good stuff from Boston. This is going to be a tough beat. They are going to be a tough team to get out in the playoffs. I could definitely see these guys going to the Cup final. But we go to Buffalo. Were they right here? Now, yeah, so a few of these guys played Game 7. Slot Shot was one of them, so he had 12 points in 4 games. Driz with 11 points in 4 games, including 9 goals, one of which was the Game 7 overtime winner. Stu with 8, not Jalen with 5, Easy Claps 4, and then the defenseman down here with 3 and 2, and Pulp with 1. So, again, it's kind of weird because some of these guys have an extra game played, so the number is a little bit inflated, but overall, somewhat even. I think Boston has the edge depth-wise. In terms of top-line level guys, you kind of see there's a bit of a similarity. Slot Shot put up a lot of good points. Same with like Muggy and Tim. But I think Boston does get an edge in this series. And if we look at the goalie stats, let me go back at this. Just really quick here. Playoffs. Yeah, so I kill you 4-3 in these playoffs. 3-4-3 goals against. 7-9-8 or 7-9-4 save percentage, excuse me. In those games, he did have a shutout, I believe. It was one of the first 3 games, and then Sway down here 6 games. He was 4-2, 2-3-3, 7-9-4 save percentage. He also had a shutout. So both these goalies with shutouts in the opening round. So with all that out of the way, how do I think this series kind of plays out? So we'll go back to the home screen here. So Boston with the home ice advantage, and like I said a few minutes ago, I think they're such a good team. Like, they're so hard to play against. And while Buffalo, they played well enough to get to round 2, the lack of depth scares me, and I want to point something out to you all. So we look at the Buffalo-Detroit series. So Buffalo goes up 3-0. Okay, so they win all the games with their Wednesday night line. But then all of a sudden, their second line comes in, and the switch is completely flipped. All of a sudden, Detroit up 4-1 in Game 4, 7-2 Game 5, 7-1 Game 6. So then not only did they win, but they like flat out dominated. And so the lack of depth from Buffalo somewhat scares me here. And I think Boston is going to take this series, and I think they take it in 5, honestly. I think Buffalo, they might get a win Wednesday night. It'd be like a close, maybe an overtime win, right? But I think Boston is such a good team. I think they have the manpower, the depth, the goaltending, the defense, everything. They're such a complete team that I think they steamroll Buffalo. And that's not a slight to them at all, to the Sabres. But it's more of a compliment to Boston that they're just so good that it's going to be hard to knock them out. Out of the 4 remaining teams, I think they're the best in the East, at least. So that'll be it kind of sucks for Buffalo because Boston in 5 is like, ugh. It's like kind of not even that close. But I think Buffalo will keep it somewhat close in terms of like the scores in each game. But it's just going to be too much for the Sabres. So I think Boston wins it in 5. And in my view, Boston will be the first team to punch their ticket to the conference finals. Now, we turn the page to the Metro Series in the East, and that is Washington versus Philly, all right? So, again, these teams, divisional rivals, they're very familiar with each other, lots of history in the last couple seasons. With the schedule in Season 6, you play the division 6 times, obviously, but then also last season, meeting in the playoffs. These guys, they definitely know each other. So this season, in Season 6, Washington went 4-1-1. Philly was 2-3-1 against the Caps. Philly won the division. They were first in the Metro. Washington won the division, not Philly. Washington won the division. and Philly was third in the Metro. The Caps swept the Penguins 4-0, and the Flyers beat the Lightning in round 1 in 5 games. Again, these special teams numbers are still from the regular season. Washington had a 27.3% power play. That was 14th in the league, and a 69.7% penalty kill. That's 13th in the league. And for the Flyers, they had a 31.6% power play, which was 6th, and a dreadful 59.4% penalty kill, which was 19th in the NHL. So in the playoffs, the Caps have scored 5 goals per game and only given up 2, so they're at a plus 12 goal differential. And the Flyers have scored a 3.6 goals for per game and given up 3.2. They're at a plus 2 goal differential. Now, keep in mind, again, as the playoffs go on, I think these numbers sort of normalize here. In the playoffs, for the Caps, Tech has been on a complete tear, 10 points, and I believe that was only in 2 games. Namphy has a 90 defensive rating, and Felix, 1998, he's got a 896 save percentage and a 167 goals against. So very strong numbers up and down the lineup for the Caps here. But for Philly, you have Silky with 10 points, 6 goals, and 4 assists. You have Winkstad with an 82.5 defensive rating. And Simmer, he played quite well in the opening round, an 803 save percentage and a 3 goals against. So take a look at the playoff leaders for both these teams. This is going to be a fun series to watch. And just beyond like the off the ice, like the banter and all that, because these guys, like I said, very familiar with one another, but these teams are just so interesting to watch because I've watched Philly for the last couple playoff runs, and I'm very familiar with kind of their game and who does what for them, all that kind of stuff. Their top line with Punisher and Silky, and I think Bowler was playing. He might have played defense when I was watching them, but with Punisher and Silky, I know those guys have been big playoff performers for Philly the last couple of playoffs here in Season 5 and now in Season 6. If we look at the numbers here, right, you have Silky with 10 points in 3 games. Morpheus, I think he was centering that line with Punisher on the left and Silky on the right. You have Paul with 4 points, Bowler with 4, Cud with 4, Punisher with 4, but 4 goals. And then you have Winkstad down here, and then Yames, he's a defenseman. No Blood, only played in 2 games, and Deemer played in 1 game. Okay, so it's a nice little team that they've got here in Philly. Now, if we go to Washington, hang on. Before I take my hand here. So Tech has got 10 points. Herb, their top rookie, he's got 8 points. Young one, defenseman, 7 points. And all these is in 2 games, by the way. He had 7 assists. Stangs with 6. McGee Sean with 4. Spurks, I don't know how to say that name, 4 points. Joker with 3. Complete Luck with 3. And then you have a couple of defensemen down here. So very even, in my opinion, when you look at the stats and all that. So I don't know, where the advantages lie, and that's the beauty of this series, right? It's hard because you didn't really get to see a ton of Washington in round 1 because of they swept Pittsburgh, and really the same could be said with Philly. They won a bunch of close games in round 1 against Tampa Bay. Now we take a look at because we all know, I'm not going back into Pittsburgh again, but we look at Tampa. Tampa Bay is a pretty formidable opponent. They're the defending Eastern Conference champions from last season. And so Philly beat them 2-1, then they win 6-5. So back-to-back, off the bat, close games to start the series. Then Tampa pushes back a bit, so now it's 2-1. But then a pair of 4-2 and then 4-3 wins for Philly. So 3 out of their 4 wins were 1-goal games, and the other one was 4-2. So it's not like they dominated Tampa Bay by any means, but they certainly got the better of them. And while the same thing, I guess, could be said for Washington over Pittsburgh, there's a couple 2-goal games in there. There's a 1-goal game, but then you have that outlier, maybe the 8-1. I'm not so sure about if that's an outlier or not, but I get the feeling that Washington played better than Philly did against Tampa Bay. And so for my prediction in this series, I know this is exactly what Paul wants to hear, owner of Philly, but I'm taking Washington in 6. And I I don't want to count out Philly at all, but I really like Washington this year. I think Olympia's got a good squad over there. Lots of trades, lots of moves, good drafting, and it's almost like a retooled Washington squad that we did not see a year ago. Um, he's got his core guys. I know Olympia lost a bunch of guys to expansion and ownership and all this and that in the offseason going into season 6, but he's done a good job kind of rebounding. He didn't have a pick till the 3rd round, I believe. So he's done a really nice job. So I think Washington, it'll be a close series. Like, you're going to see a lot of 1-goal games. Maybe an overtime or two mixed in there. And so will Philly's luck and, I guess, skill of playing well in these tight games, will it continue? It might. It very well might. But I do think Washington will get the edge in this series, and I think they can close it out Thursday night in Game 6. All right. So moving on, now we shift our focus to the West. All right. So our first series is the high-powered LA Kings taking on the Chicago Blackhawks. So in the regular season, LA went 5-0-1. So Chicago did beat them in overtime in the regular season. So that's something that only 3 teams did. It only happened 3 times. LA won 51 of 54 games. And Chicago, so they went 1-4-1. All right, so there are a couple of overtime games in there, right? So that could it bodes again. It doesn't say much about Chicago, but against LA, I mean, that's pretty good in my opinion. So these are the top 2 teams in the Central. Of course, LA finished first. LA swept Anaheim 4-0 in the first round. Not too surprising. And Vegas, they were defeated by Chicago in 6 games last week. Now, looking at the power play and penalty kill numbers, again, regular season stats, LA was 31.6% on the power play. That's 7th in the NHL, and then they were 79.1% on the penalty kill, good for 2nd in the league. And for Chicago, they were at a 32.1% power play, so that's 5th in the NHL, and 72.7% penalty kill, which was good for 7th in the NHL. So some very strong special teams in this series. Now, in the playoffs, LA is scoring at a 5.75 goals for per game and only giving up 1.5 goals against. Now, they're at a plus 17 goal differential. So, again, small sample size. I don't know what to make of that. It's so only 4 games. It doesn't really tell you a whole lot. And for Chicago, 4.33 goals for per game and a 3.17 goals against. And that's in 6 games. They have a plus 7 goal differential. So the playoff scoring leaders, Drysdale leading the way for LA, 2 goals, 10 assists for 12 points for him. Foams is at an 80 defensive rating, and Dark Times with an 867 save percentage and a 1.5 goals against. Very strong numbers. And for Chicago, you have Huxt. He's got 5 goals, 6 assists for 11 points. Rampy with 73.78 defensive rating, and Rip Supreme with an 824 save percentage and a 317 goals against. All right. Now, again, we'll look at the player leaders here for the playoffs for both sides. We'll start with LA. So now you're going to see probably a bunch of crazy stats, but maybe not, because there's only a couple games played, only 4 games. So Drysdale, again, 12 points in 3 games. DJ at 11 points. Hockey Time, 7 points. Baslin with 6. Presti with 6. Precut Club with 5. Dorito with 5. And then Foams, Torts, Kolodov down here with 4 and 3-3. So, again, this is pretty, status quo for the Kings, to be honest. Again, no offense to Anaheim, but not really much of a fight put up against them. They kept some of the games close, but there's also some blowouts in there as well. So, it's tough to really judge LA fairly because, the games weren't even, it wasn't that competitive. But if you look at Chicago, now this was a dogfight of a series, and Vegas gave them a good run for their money. Huxt had 11 points, Pasternak had 9, Cam had 8, Tower with 7, Rampy with 7, Shrek with 7. So a lot of balanced scoring here up and down the lineup. And you got Outlaw with 6, Weiss with 5, and then Cripson and 09 on the back end with 2 apiece. So I think these numbers are more indicative. The Chicago stats I trust more than the LA stats because Vegas really gave Chicago a good run. The games were somewhat close. Vegas, it was back and forth a bit. So I like Chicago's team, and I like the makeup that they got. Now, this series, it intrigues me quite a bit because of the somewhat success that the Blackhawks had against the Kings in the regular season. I don't think this will be a sweep for LA. I do think LA wins this series, but I think it'll be in like 6 games maybe. And that's probably the ceiling for Chicago, in my opinion. Now, Chicago's gonna have to grind this out because it certainly will not come easy. And you know how LA plays. They're very high octane, scoring a bunch. LA's best defense is playing offense. I mean, you don't see these crazy like goalie stats because they face like 10 shots a game because half the game is spent in the opposition's end. So for Chicago, you have to make the most of your chances on the power play. You got to score. Try and go 33%. If you have 3 power plays, you got to score on one of them. You got to kill all the penalties. You got to stay out of the box, right? Because if you don't have to kill penalties if you don't take penalties. Okay, but it's true. So can Chicago win this series? Yes, theoretically, yes, they can. I don't think they will, but they certainly have the makeup of a team that can. It's a shame, honestly, and this, as the owner of Seattle, I'm allowed to say this, and I bet you Royal Rome would say the same thing. He would agree with me with what I'm about to say, but I think it's kind of a shame that this series is in the second round because this is probably closer to like a Western Conference Finals type of matchup. And that's no offense to my Kraken or the Oilers, but neither of us, Seattle nor Edmonton, have been able to beat LA at all. I think Chicago's has the best chance remaining in the West to beat LA. Now, Boston, they have that'd be a great series, but again, that's a little bit ahead of ourselves. But I think LA beats Chicago, and I think they do it in 6 games. All right. Now, the final matchup, this is going to be a doozy. Edmonton taking on Seattle, all right? So, as the owner of Seattle, I'm very excited about this series. I can't wait for this, for Wednesday night to get here. And during the season, in the regular season, Edmonton went 4-0-2 against the Kraken, and Seattle was 2-3-1 against the Oilers. The Edmonton went 27-22-5. Seattle was 26-21-7. In the first round, Edmonton defeated Vancouver in Game 7, and Seattle made quick work of Calgary, a sweep 4-0 there. For special teams, again, this is the regular season. Edmonton scored at a 31.6% power play in the regular season and a 69.9% penalty kill, so that's good for 8th and 12th. Meanwhile, Seattle, they were at a 29.3% power play and at a 73.6% penalty kill, so that's good for 12th and 5th, respectively, there. For Edmonton, their goals for per game, they're at a 3.71 goals for per game and at a 3.14 goals against per game, so they're sitting right now at a +4 goal differential. For Seattle, they scored 5 goals per game and only gave up 2.25 against. Again, small sample size. Do I think 5 goals a game is sustainable? No. But it is. It did have 5 goals a game did happen. There were a pair of 7-goal games mixed in there, so that's definitely bumping that stat up. But, the goals against is something to keep an eye on because now I've been I've been harping on this a lot this season because it's my team, but we give up a shit ton of goals. So the fact that we're at a 2.25, albeit in 4 games, is promising. Ace played great. The defense played great all 4 games. So I think just something to keep an eye on, and we are at a +11 goal differential. Now for Edmonton, some of these guys have 5 games played because of the the incidents going on in that series, the compromises that were made. So we'll look at all that. But I know Cooper is one of those guys that has 8 games played, so he's 18 points, 12 goals, which is very impressive. Lane, the former Kraken, he's the top defenseman in the playoffs so far for Edmonton. He's at an 80 defensive rating. And Royal Rum, what a Friday night he had. An 870 save percentage and a 280 goals against. The first game on Friday night, he kept Edmonton in it in the first period after they killed off a couple penalties. He stood on his head. He gave his team a chance to win. They score first, and they just never looked back. Now for the Kraken, yours truly, me, 6 goals, 3 assists for 9 points in 3 games in the playoffs so far. My GM Spectacles with an 85 defensive rating. And Ace, again, he played great, an 845 save percentage and a 225 goals against. All right, so those are your stats there. Take a look again at the player leaders for the playoffs. We'll first look at Edmonton because I do want to talk about some of their guys here. So, again, you see the 5 games played there. They did go game 7, so that's fine, but 5-5. Just, these stats are right. Just don't worry about it. If you're kind of like, they are correct. So, again, Cooper is at 18 points in 5 games. Diamond Supply with 15 points in 3 games. Run Like Hell, 7 points in 3 games. Washco, 7 points in 4 games. Kevin Jamo, 6 points, 3 games. Tupperware with 6 points. Heartless with 5. And then some defensemen at the bottom there. So, you see, man, these guys, they got some firepower up front. And for a team that gave up a ton of goals in the regular season, maybe we're turning it around. I hope so. But definitely got to keep an eye on these very skilled wingers. Cooper, Diamond Supply, Run Like Hell, Washko. I think Washko he played a little bit of defense as well, but I think he might play center too. I know Kevin Jamo is a center. Tupperware is a defenseman. Heartless kind of plays wing and defense. I know Black Sheep played a bit of left wing on Thursday night, I think. So definitely the top guys here, Cooper, Diamond Supply, Run Like Hell, and Washko. Got to keep an eye on them. And for the Kraken, it's more of a balanced approach. Like, there's not, like, I don't think I'm the best player on my team, quite frankly. Also, you got to remember this line. So, my line played all 3 Wednesday night, and then the other line played 1 game. So, and in that game, they had 5 points, 4 points, 4 points. So, 4 points for Heiskanen. The defenseman had 4 assists. So, it might not seem like a lot, but you got to remember that only 1 game played. So, we can definitely hang right with them. This is going to be a fantastic series. You can't see me, but I'm smiling ear to ear just because of all 4 series, right? We'll go back to the home screen just so we can get a visual of this. Of all 4 series, I know I don't really think Boston and Buffalo is going to be too close. LA, Chicago definitely has the potential to be a blowout, but maybe close. Philly, Washington is definitely going to be the closest series of those 3. I think this series, Edmonton, Seattle, will be the closest of them all. Hang on 1 second. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. I had to take a work call. I forget what I was saying. I think I was talking about Buffalo, Boston is going to be close. No, they're not. Okay, I think I remember. Boston, Buffalo, not going to be that close. At least I think. I think Boston is going to be better. Is going to kind of overpower Buffalo. L.A. and Chicago, I don't know. L.A. could definitely just blow that one out. Washington and Philly will definitely be close. I think Washington wins it in 6. But I think Edmonton and Seattle, I think this is going to be the closest of the 3. I think you're going to see a lot of 1-goal games, 2-goal games, maybe some overtime. But with all that said, all that in mind, I think my Kraken are going to win this in 6. And I know there's probably the Edmonton guys listening to this are rolling their eyes. You're probably thinking, what the fuck, you fucking idiot. Of course, bias. Yeah. Now, you got to think about this, right? You guys in Edmonton, you had to beat Vancouver. You had to get to 7 games, right? And a lot of back and forth. Ton of 1-goal games here. So you had 3 straight 1-goal games there. A 2-goal game in game 1. But you look at Seattle and Calgary, right? kind of felt them out in the first couple games, pulled out a couple of 3-2 wins. But then we just beat the shit out of them. We blew them out. In the final 2 games, we outscored them 14-5 in the final 2 games. We scored 7 goals each. Now, that's with 2 different lines scoring 7 goals as well. So I don't want to hear anything about bias. I guarantee you, if anyone, I know you can take a look at the regular season stats. Yeah, you beat us 4 times. I get all that, but personally, I would take out that one Friday on like a month ago. You take that out, and then it's like 3 wins and then 1 win, right? So anyway, because we split that night. That night was crazy. But anyway, I think if you look at this, right, what have you done for me recently? Vancouver is not that great, obviously, but they were the wild card team. Like Calgary finished way ahead of them, and yet you had to get to you were going into Friday night. You were down 3-2 in the series, so you had to win back-to-back games on Friday night to beat these guys. We haven't played in almost a damn week, so I don't want to hear nothing about being biased and bullshit, all that. I bet most people will predict Seattle to win anyway. You got a good team, but Seattle is good too. I really like Seattle's chances in the series. If Edmonton wins, that's totally fair, and I'll take it. Whatever. But I really like Seattle in the series. Edmonton, it's not going to be a sweep like Calgary. I don't think it's going to be a sweep. But I think Edmonton, they'll get a game here and there. It'll be close. But I like the Kraken a lot. So those are my predictions. And I know I'm going to get chirped by the Edmonton players, and I'll take it. I don't really care. You know what? Prove it on the ice. That's all I'll say. So again, thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate it. I know a lot of people really enjoy these, and I hope these are worth a watch. I'll have to put these two. I had to take a work call there, so I have to it might take me a little bit of time to put these together. I'm just kind of talking to myself, but shouldn't be a problem. So again, chirp me. I don't really care. Call me out. Say hello. Whatever. You can ping me on Discord. You can DM me. All that kind of stuff. I'm always around. So yep. That's it for me. Good luck in the series to everyone, and even you, Edmonton. Good luck to you guys. And I'll talk to you guys in a few days when we get to see who the Eastern Conference finalists are and the Western Conference finalists are. It should be a great week of hockey. So, again, stay safe. I know we had, at least locally here by me, having some snow today. So, stay safe. Good luck, and I'll talk to you later.